What is up, everybody? Mr. Curtis here. Welcome to Unit 5.5. We're doing the Between the Wars period, rise of totalitarianism here. This is post-World War I and what's going on in the world. And really what's going to happen is World War I was supposed to be the war to end all wars. It was considered the Great War because it was supposed to end all wars. And less than 20 years later, 21 years later, give or take, we're going to have a second world war. And this is the rise or the lead up to this stuff and what's going on around the world. So here's the deal. After World War I, two major problems happened. First, we got a bunch of countries who are angry at the Treaty of Versailles. One is Germany. They were punished for World War I. And we also have Italy and Japan who weren't given what they received. This is a little review of World War I outcomes where people are not happy about the treaty. So we have three countries who are already upset. These countries have new governments in power. These new governments are not very well liked. There's all kinds of issues going on in the 1920s with these three countries. And to make matters worse is not only are these three countries upset, but in 1929 and the early 1930s, the Great Depression hits the world. Because the world was so interconnected with trade, the Great Depression doesn't just happen in one country. It's not just a U.S. problem. It happens in the U.S. and Europe and the colonies, and people in Japan are going to have issues, and all throughout the world, we're going to see this Great Depression hit. There's a whole bunch of factors that lead to it, most of which we don't need to get into here, but you'll get into it more in U.S. history. But the stock market crashes in 1929. And what that means is, and we talked about stocks in here a little bit, but if you own Amazon for $150, right, one share of Amazon, and tomorrow, let's say everyone decides they're going to sell all their stocks because they're worried that things aren't looking good in the country. And you try and sell your $150 share of Amazon. It's not going to be worth $150 because no one's going to buy it for that. And what happens during the stock market crash is because everyone is selling their stocks, the price of stocks go down. So your $150 of Amazon that you've been saving and investing for your kid's future or to buy a new house someday, it went from $150 in one day to $10. And then the next day it's down to $1. So you've lost $149. Now you multiply that by 10,000 shares, you're losing a significant amount of money. That's a problem. People are producing too much. No one's buying anything. It becomes a massive problem around the world. And when I say Great Depression, I don't just mean a little bit of unemployment. I'm talking 3 out of every 10 people who should be working can't find a job. And when economic conditions are poor, when people don't have money, when people don't have jobs, when price of things go up and gas goes up and all these horrible things happen to people where their wallet is affected, they are willing, historically, to allow the government to limit their freedoms and to turn to somebody who agrees to solve these problems in order to put money back in their pocket and to have some stability, to make sure their kids aren't starving to death. And that's what we're going to see, especially in Germany. And in Germany, a new type of government emerges called Nazism or fascism. And what this is, the characteristics of this government structure, which is led by, as you all are very well aware, Adolf Hitler. And this is their symbol, known as the swastika. They have a few characteristics that are very similar to what we talked about with Stalin in the Soviet Union. One, he is a totalitarian. And what that means is, if you forgot, he has total control over their push. What they're hoping for is total control over all aspects of life. They believe that one person is much better to solve the problem than a government filled with 500 or 600 people. The second thing they believe in is extreme nationalism. The Nazis are going to believe that and push that they are the Germanic people, the people from Germany are the superior race, and they should have pride in who they are. They believe that they were smart, intelligent, the master group of people, and their goal is to go against the Treaty of Versailles. They say, look at how horrible the Treaty of Versailles was for us. We should be better. And that we should go against everything that the treaty said. If the treaty said we should pay money, we're going against that. If the treaty said that we should not have a military, we're going against that. If the treaty said that we lost our colonies, we should go back and reclaim them. So we should get all the stuff that we lost from the Treaty of Versailles and build back up our military. And we should have pride in who we are again, because we were the laughing stock after World War I. The third thing they're going to have is propaganda against their enemies. And by enemies, we're talking anyone who is not, that the Nazis don't consider pure German. One of the major groups, and I'm sure you know this, and we'll get into it more later in the unit, is the Jewish people. And there is a Jewish population in Germany. They are a target. They are a scapegoat. They are blamed for things by the Nazis, and there's going to be propaganda against them. Articles written. blaming deaths of people on it, blaming the Great Depression on them. So the Jewish people are going to be the scapegoat for this ideology of Nazism or fascism, which has totalitarianism, nationalism, and propaganda against their enemies. It's not just Jewish people who are targeted. There's other groups of people who are going to be targeted, but they are the primary focus of what the Nazis think. The Nazis also do not like communists, and at the time, they considered the Jewish people to be part of the Communist Party and trying to overthrow the government. Bunch of craziness, but that's what they believed in. So this group is, during the 1920s and 30s, is trying to gain members and gain power. And what occurs in the 1930s, as the Great Depression hits, Germany experiences what's called a hyperinflation, meaning that the price of things go up. But we're experiencing inflation right now in the United States. People might say, oh, I remember when a bag of Doritos cost $3.99, or grandparents might say, I remember when I could go to the movies for $1, and now it's $13 a ticket. That's inflation. That happens naturally. Sometimes it's worse than others. And from 2023, 2024, there's been a significant inflation going on. But this is called hyperinflation. It is outrageously absurd inflation. And I want to just show you this chart here real quick. So in 1914, I want you to just imagine that, let's get rid of the translation German mark to US dollar. A loaf of bread in 1914 cost $4.20 mark. Like, let's just say $4.20 marks, whatever. In 1919, that cost goes up to 14 marks, and marks is the German version of the dollar. By 1921, it's 76 marks. By 1923, it's 4.3 million marks, and by November of 1923, it's 4.2 billions, trillion marks. This is hyperinflation. Money becomes worthless, and people wonder why this government in Germany is not fixing it. People are going to use money to heat their fireplaces. Kids are going to make money kites because the money becomes worthless. It costs more to buy a kite than it is just to make a kite out of money. So these problems, again, I said, in economically troubled times, people are willing to support somebody who is on the extreme. And the idea behind Hitler is he's not brainwashing people. He's not putting on something on the radio where people are listening and they're basically being mesmerized by him. He is promising to solve a problem, and the people of Germany are convinced that these aspects here are believable because of a result of the economic troubles. Not everyone buys into it. They actually have elections in 1932. So you can see this is the Nazi party. So this is the first election in 1928. The Nazis won. They're a political party. They're running. They're trying to win, like Democrats, Republicans, Green Party, any party in the United States. So there's all these parties in Germany. They get 12 seats in their Senate, basically. It's called the Reichstag. And by 1930, 108. And as the Great Depression hits, now they get 230 seats. And then they go down a little bit. And then they go back up to 288. And by March of 1933, they have a majority. They have the most seats in the Reichstag, and Hitler makes a push to make himself an absolute temporary ruler. And as of November 3rd, 1933, he bans all other political parties in Germany. He says he's a totalitarian. He says, you can only be a Nazi, no other party allowed. And this is the beginning of the implementation, or to put into practice, of the Nazi beliefs, which are these. Why people continue to support him, and I can't say this enough about the economic stuff. This is the unemployment rate of Germany in 1932, 30%. This is when the Nazis take over in 1933. It's at 25%. And by 1938, it's down to 2%. Now, these numbers are a little skewed because people who were citizens of the country are going to lose citizenship. For example, Jewish people in Germany are going to lose their citizenship, so they're not part of this, but it's a huge decrease. And if people are willing to sacrifice freedoms in order to have economic security, you have just employed 5 million people based on this chart. Meanwhile, in the United States, in 1932, the unemployment rate was 23%, and it's still at 19% at the same time that Germany is down to 2%. So my point of all this is, I want to keep in the back of your mind as we talk about Hitler in class and as we get into him and some of the horrifically awful things that we did. I want you to remember of the rationalization of people who buy into it, and learn the historical lesson that sometimes during economic downturns, it's not necessarily a good idea to have your freedom limited and to support somebody who becomes a totalitarian and an absolute racist and a piece of garbage. So on that note, That's what I got. You got any questions? You write down. We'll talk more about this in class. We'll get into more into the cause of World War II in the next Ed Puzzle. That's all I got. You got any questions? Let me know. Out.